we will go ahead and get started this evening. Thank you everyone so much for joining us to our leadership training series. We've been doing these trainings for, gosh, almost 2 years. We've been trying to do them monthly. So if you've missed any of the previous ones, we do have all of those listed on our webpage. We were gracious enough to get a grant from FEMA to do the recruitment and retention marketing campaign, and part of that is our leadership series. So we were able to do that with that grant. We are recording this tonight, and so if you want to share it with anyone, you can certainly do that. And also, we will be giving an evaluation afterwards. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts about tonight's training. And also, if you have ideas for future trainings, please include those in your evaluation. And we'll also have a certificate of completion at the end as well. So I am pleased to introduce Chief Shawn Stokes. Shawn is the program manager with Cooperative Services, LLC. He is currently working with Sourcewell on their public safety cooperative procurement initiative. Shawn has held several leadership positions in public safety association management, including assistant executive director for the IAFC. Currently, he is the fire chief of the Dunn-Loring Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department, chairman of the Fairfax County, Virginia Volunteer Fire Commission, and he's also a board member for the IAFC Volunteer Accommodation Officer Section. So please help me welcome Shawn Stokes, and you can take it away, Chief.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it, and glad to be here. I have been blessed with about 18 years of working with chiefs in Montana. For a boy from Western Pennsylvania, that it was a very different experience, but got some very good friends up there, and always happy to talk to the folks in Montana. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about cooperative procurement and cooperative purchasing. Trying to give you some tools and some ideas of how you can purchase what you need for your fire departments in an effective and efficient manner, and at the best price possible. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is cooperative purchasing, understand how it works, some best practices, and then offer some solutions to you that you can use that are some pretty effective tools for the fire service. So Michael did a pretty good introduction there for me. Appreciate that. One of the things I want to stress is that, as I said, as it says there, second generation volunteer, has raised about 35 miles north of Pittsburgh in the fire service. I know that Fairfax County, Virginia, one of the larger fire departments in the nation, I like to say that we all have the same problems, challenges, advantages. It's all a matter of scale and scope. But I also come from a much more rural background and environment than the one that I sit in today. So a lot of this, I'm going to try and frame everything in how do you use this coming from an all-volunteer fire department in a rural community, and not just from the, I don't know what we got, $220 million budget that Fairfax County holds. Where, I want to try to give it that perspective, and it's certainly a perspective that I have been around for pretty much all of my life. So to that, when your fire department needs to go buy something, and when I say something, that could be anything from a case of toilet paper to a printer to a pumper, okay, to a type 1 to a type 5, type whatever it is you're looking to buy, okay. The real questions that you got to be asking yourself is what are you going to buy, and how are you going to buy it? Okay. And the how that you're going to buy it is driven by, one, what are your regulations or rules around how you buy things? And those can be governed by a municipality, a city, a town, a county. fire district. It can be driven by your bylaws. Okay. My VFD, we don't, I don't have to go to bid. The neighboring VFD, they have to do a competitive process. And that's dictated by their bylaws that are a part of the makeup of their corporation. So as a nonprofit, typically we all have there's some stuff that we can buy out of petty cash, if you're familiar with that term. And above that, there's usually some kind of process, okay? And whether it's formal or informal, I'll sit and say, I don't have to go, I can go buy a pumper. I can walk up to a dealer and say, I'll take one of those. It'll be 4 years now, but I'll take one of those. But realistically, I'm not going to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, about the idea of, even if we're purely running off of community donations, that's still the public giving us money to provide a service. Okay, they're paying us. They're giving us money to allow us to be able to respond to emergencies. There's an amount of trust coming from them that we're going to use that money appropriately. And that's what a lot of this, the idea of procurement and where the cooperative purchasing comes in is, even if you're a small rural fire department, community-based, you still need to be able to use the money that you're getting, whether it's tax dollars, whether it's donations, whether it's, corporate sponsorship, whatever it may be, whether it's the hardware store down the street that's giving you in-kind parts and equipment. There's an amount of public trust, and we need to be able to keep that. And so that's where the concept of procurement comes from, even if it's not formal processes and, municipal ordinances and those kinds of things. It's still, we need to be able to do that. And so that's, you do that probably every day without thinking about it. Okay. So public procurement, you can read that off the screen. Pretty much everything we just talked about, it's acquiring things using some form of public dollars. The big key takeaway is that fiduciary responsibility for public trust and confidence, regardless of where we're getting the money from and how formal that it is coming into your departments. This is something that we need to be able to ensure. So, formal or informal, do you have a procurement policy? If it's written down, have you actually seen it? Is it up to date? We'll talk about authority levels here in a moment. Here's a concept that's important to keep in mind: lowest price versus best value. I'm gonna use Sourcewell as an example of a program that's out there that you can use. Lowest price is you go out to bid and whoever's cheaper. Doesn't matter if it's what you need or not. You put together a spec, and if they meet the requirements of the RFP and they're cheaper, they're the least expensive option or response. You got to take them. Okay. Best value is that you are weighing whether or not what the product is does what you want and does it in the way that you want it. Okay. And variables there can be interoperability. If everyone in your area has SCBA manufacturer A, and you go to bid and the lowest price, and you're required to take lowest price, and B comes in lower, you're stuck buying B. Okay, if you're doing a best value evaluation, you can look at that and go, well, A may be 10% more expensive, but that 10% is more than eaten up by the ability to be able to interoperate cylinders, RIP packs, the ability, buddy breathing systems, to be able to interconnect those. and that says you take the best value. Here in Virginia, an example that I'll give is that the state police do a contract for light vehicles, pickups, sedans, that kind of thing. And it's a fixed, they do lowest price, it's one choice, and it's only whatever they bid. So if this year they didn't bid power, well, who buys a car without power windows anymore? They didn't bid cruise control and you want a cruise control. You can't get cruise control. You can only buy what they selected. The town of Bluefield, Virginia, is who everybody in Virginia buys their vehicles from, except for the state, because they do a best value. And because it's best value, you can get Fords, you can get Chevys, you can get Mopars, you can pretty much anything in their catalog. If I want to buy a King Ranch pickup for my take-home car, I can order that off of the Blue Ridge contract, or sorry, Bluefield contract. Probably not a good use of funds. I didn't do that the last one that I bought, of course, but it's an option. And you're going to get the best price available for whatever package you buy. I can tell you that the last pickup that I bought, we bought a pickup, a cap, and a plow, a V plow on it, and I think we saved $10,000 on the combined package than if we just gone out and bought the individual pieces and not bought through the contract. So best value, lowest price. So we talk about spending thresholds. In your fire departments, especially smaller departments, you probably have, here's what you can buy with petty cash. Everything above that, you may need to have a board approval. You may need to do an RFP. It depends on what your ordinances or bylaws require. I can tell you in my VFD, the chief and the president can spend up to $1,000. So I can spend $1,000 without asking anybody for permission. Over $1,000, my board of directors has to approve it. That's the check and balance part of the system. And then I have to defend to them that I've done due diligence for them to accept it and allow me to go purchase whatever it is. That's how simple it is for us. And I bet you it's probably that simple for a lot of you. But, you know, within public procurement, when you get into some municipal, some of the towns and the cities and stuff, you very well may have a lower limit. You may have a middle point where you can get, as they say, informal quotes. Hey, I talked to 3 people. These 2 gave me a price. This one didn't. Okay, great. And then above that, there's some kind of formal solicitation process. I'll set the stage right now. The beauty of cooperative purchasing and programs like Sourcewell is anything above that lower limit, the petty cash allocation limit, anything above it, you can use, and if you can buy it off a Sourcewell contract, you're going to meet all of your requirements. And we'll talk more about why that is, but you're going to be able to meet those requirements. And that's one of the beauties of cooperative purchasing and programs like Sourcewell is that they do a lot of your legwork, and then you can go in and say, I'll take one of those. So procurement strategy, it's all about relationships. Again, putting personal example on it. We're trying to figure out what to do with an ambulance to start to replace one. It doesn't need to go yet, but with the lead times and the such, we want to kind of get ahead of the curve here. We're looking at, do we remount? Do we buy a new one? I have relationships with multiple manufacturers and dealers here in the Northern Virginia area. I've already got that in place. I can go talk to them. And yes, both of them and their offerings that we're working with have Sourcewell contracts. Have that communication. If you have a formal process, if you're in a town or a county or fire district that you have a specific process, it's not just communicating with who you want to buy from, what you're looking to buy, but also with whomever controls that process. In some of your bigger cities, your Bozeman's, your Billings, etc. They've got procurement officials. They've got somebody that's what their job is. They may have multiple people that's what their job is. Talk to them, give them a chance to help. I know that seems odd because you think of procurement officials as or people that have official in their name. It's like saying hi, I'm here to audit you and I'm here to help you. Like, hi, I'm from Washington, I'm here to help you. But most of them really are, okay. They don't want for anybody that they're responsible for getting in trouble, not doing what they're supposed to do. But they're not there to become an impediment. So know what the rules are for you. Okay. Rural department, nonprofit, you may be pretty much just use common sense and due diligence. Fire districts probably have rules. Towns probably have rules, cities have rules. But know what they are, know who the players are, work through that early so that when you start to want to put rubber on the road, you know who you're talking to, and you know what where to go and what you need to do. So cooperative public procurement, simply put, is two or more governments buying something together on the same contract. Okay. Lots of great definitions here, but at its simplest form, it could be, and just to put names to it, if Columbus and Red Lodge wanted to go together and bid something, they could do it, or Columbus could do it and set it up so that Red Lodge could buy off of it. Great. That's cooperative public procurement. It allows for sharing, contracts between different government entities, nonprofit entities. I go back to nonprofits because a lot of the smaller fire departments were 501c3. One of my colleagues on the VCOS board down in Harris County, Texas, he's a 501c3. Different structures, different places, but the cooperative public procurement, the idea is that it shares the contracts, it connects the buyers and the sellers, and the real key is the efficiencies and the savings down here at the bottom. That's really what you're shooting for there. Now, $2 words, cooperative public procurement. What does that really mean? What do you know it as? It's a great picture, right? It's piggybacking. It's bridging. These are all common terms that refer to what we're talking about here. Okay. So what is cooperative? Is this a big deal? Or are people doing this? The answer is yes. And increasingly so. I've been working in the cooperative space for 2 years now, and I can tell you that when I started 2 years ago this month, it was kind of like we're kind of at the tipping point. Like things were about to go take off, especially in the fire service and public safety space. And over the last 2 years, we've gone, especially with the suppliers on the supplier side, from people going, oh, I don't know if we want to do this, to when does the bid open? We need on this. We've got so many people coming to us going, we can only buy from you if you're Sourcewell. That it really has turned a corner. And I look at Crosby, who I work with, Crosby Grindle, and work for, and he's been doing this for 20 years. And so, he's seen it from when almost nobody understood what it was. It's that old joke. First you couldn't spell EMT, now you be one. We're now at this point. And what it is across the entire local, state government, tribal governments across the country, this is where it is. This is where it was in 22, and this is the projections out. The sales are in billions and billions of dollars on these contracts. And this is actually pretty old. This goes back about 5 years or so, 6. But this, even at that point, is showing what municipalities and fire departments, the nonprofits that are tied to the municipalities, were actually doing. And the reason that this space is growing is that it is it's just so much easier. It's a much easier process, and certainly in the post-COVID world and some of the supply chain issues that we're still having, or if it's not so much, I mean, it's supply 4 years for a pumper, it's supply chain, but it's just because they've gotten so many orders that they're so backed up. It's not that they can't get the parts to build them, but the lead times now on stuff is incredible compared to what we were used to. And so we're going to see here in a minute of how this can help to condense that for us and make it a lot easier. So cooperative public procurement piggybacking, it's authorized typically by state statute. Yours is, I've got an eye reading chart here in a few slides where I've got your statute for the state of Montana. Typically, the co-ops are created in a specific way. Most of them are government entities. They need to be government entities. It needs to be a government entity that's going out and doing the solicitation process, okay? And it has to have wording that says it can be used by others. You will see some cooperatives that are not nonprofit, that are for-profit companies. You need to make sure whether or not you can use them or not. Every state is different. Some states do, some states don't. But the ones that come from government entities pretty universally are accepted state to state, especially on these big cooperative programs. So where did this come from? Well, it started, I mentioned the Virginia State Police goes out and you can, explorers and whatever the light vehicles. It came from the realization that a lot of state governments were buying things in bulk, of course, and hey, why can't we hand this down to our municipal governments, whether it's, bulk commodities like road salt, or, equipment, vehicles, computers, whatever. So a lot of it came out of state procurement programs, and hey, we should be able to share this with municipalities. Kind of a, chocolate peanut butter. Hey, this is pretty good. And again, efficient use of time and resources. If the state's already done the bid, and hey, I can go order X tons of road salt, then for my township, why shouldn't I be able to do that? And I'm going to get a better price because we're buying it in bulk and we're buying it together. So that's where a lot of it started from. Then we started to see 2 or more government agencies collaborating together. Certainly on a different scale here in the DC area, we have what's known as the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. It's all the counties, cities, etc., the district around the Beltway and out a little ways. But it's, here's a regional area, and the way you can set it up is that any of us can, we go off, and one of these municipalities goes off and does a bid, and they put the right language in, and then that way you can get you're going to get better price because the person bidding, the company bidding, is going to say, well, I'm not just selling to Fairfax County, big enough as it is, but I'm selling to everybody in the Washington area. First vehicle that I ever bought was an ambulance. It was bought off of a contract with Prince George's County, Maryland. Different state. That was okay, but they were within the COG. And they had actually written a contract that, and this was back, it was written in 97, 98. We bought one in 2001 and 2004. And when we bought the one in 2004, because the way they had written the contract, we paid the same $135,000 price for the unit that we had paid in 2000. And the going price for the new ones at that time was like 190. But they had put the contract in everybody in the region. I think they delivered tens of these things at the end of the contract. The volunteers alone in our county bought like 7 or 8, I think we ordered, to get in on the price difference. But that was because we could take advantage of that. So that's an example of 2 or more government agencies working together. Obviously, like I also brought up the Bluefield example for the light vehicles, same kind of thing. And actually, the interesting thing is that you can have one agency. The next step of this is you end up with a lead agency. That's kind of what that Bluefield example is. That's what Sourcewell is. They're a government entity that becomes the lead agency, and then they go off and do it, and others can buy off of it from that cooperative purchasing. The solicitations have to have language that tells the respondents that it's going to be used cooperatively. Because what can happen is if you don't put that language in and then you allow it to be used that way, somebody will come back and say, well, I would have put in if I thought I was going to be able to sell to, half of Montana. Well, I would have bid this, but I didn't bid it because I thought I was only bidding for Bozeman. And then that gets kind of ugly. So you need to make sure that when these get put together, it needs to be clear that when they're put together, that it's going to be used broadly. Okay. The next level are the cooperative procurement organizations. That's what Sourcewell is. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about Sourcewell's story and what they do. But typically, public agencies. There are nonprofits that do it. There are for-profit corporations. Your mileage may vary. Lots of fine print, quick talking. Check it before you use one of those. There are a lot that are not, they're public agencies, and those are we know for certain that they are good. There are hundreds of regional and industries co-ops out there, state sheriff's associations, councils of government, so on and so forth. We'll talk about a few of the bigger ones that are in our space here in a moment. So with these big cooperatives, they become the lead agency, or they either are the lead agency or they have a lead agency that issues the RFP and awards the contracts. They do the process. They're doing the competitive process. Other government entities and nonprofits like volunteer fire departments can piggyback on the contract. Here's a key term, and you're going to probably hear me say this a couple of times. It satisfies local solicitation requirements without the need for a formal solicitation. People a lot of times like to say, oh, great, if I buy from Sourcewell, I don't have to follow my procurement. Wrong. That is not a true statement. You always have to follow your procurement. The difference is that Sourcewell does it for you and is accepted by, in one form or another, every state in the union. And it's widely accepted in Montana. So it's not that you're not doing your procurement process. You are. You're meeting your procurement requirements. Sourcewell did all the work for you. And then you can go and use and pick from their catalog of offerings that they have contracts with. So it's not that you're not doing it. It's merely you're doing it through a different form. So we talk about that timeline. So stages of buying something, okay? You define what you want, you create your spec, You go and you do your RFP and your solicitation, whatever that is, as formal or informal as it may be. All right. Then you go and you place your order. And that takes a period of time, right? You're buying a snowblower, probably pretty straightforward what you're doing. You're buying a new Type 3 pumper, it takes a lot more time, right? Well, what's going on today? I've alluded to this a couple of times. I've got a meeting in a week and a half. We're looking at a new Type 1 because out here all we have is pavement queens. All we have is pavement queens, and to us, tankers have wheels and not wings. I'm looking at 4 to 5 years from a couple of the big brand name manufacturers. I'm lucky. I'm going to be 3 to 4 years before I can get this thing delivered, and that's if I order it today. If I go out and do a full bid, how much time is that taking me? So the trick is, actually, it helps if I go the right direction. Wouldn't it be nice to condense the time period by not having to do that whole RFP process because it's already done for you by the co-op? It creates a time savings. And again, I said you're going to hear this from me a couple of times. You're satisfying the competitive solicitation requirement. You are not skipping them. But if you can sit down and define your need and create your spec and be able to say, hey, I'm going to buy from vendor A. Vendor A is who I want. And you know that you're meeting your requirements. You know you're getting a good price. And you're comfortable that you're using the public's money right. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to condense this down and get some time savings, especially with some of the lead times that we're talking about these days? That's the value of this. And that's the value of this, again, whether you're the largest fire department in the state of Montana or the smallest. It helps if I turn the wheel the right way. So the value on this is that it is a two-way street. I can tell you that from from our side, from the user side, the people buying stuff, it saves time equals money, and getting the equipment that you need in the time frame that you need it, or closer to it. From the supplier perspective, they don't have time to be doing all of these RFPs, to be responding to them. Okay, the reality is that, and I've heard from people all over the country where they're like, yeah, we put out an RFP for an aerial and we got one company to respond, because the other dealers were like, yeah, I'm probably, I don't know that I'm going to get it, and I'm not going to spend my time. But with the cooperative purchasing, we're now at the point where most major manufacturers are sitting there going, no, we want to try to get this. We want to put in for this, and we hope we get awarded, because it makes so many of the municipalities are coming back saying, we want to use this kind of contract. Okay. Typically, because most cooperatives are doing best value, you get the full catalog. Okay. So from the supplier perspective, they get the ability to put their whole catalog in front of you. You get the ability to be able to pick everything that you need. You've already got these relationships, so it's not like you got to go out and you're now dealing with somebody new because, well, they got the cheapest price. And you don't have to deal with low bid, low quality awards. And you're getting a established discounted ceiling-based price. And that way, you're getting a good price, and you're using your public money, whether it's from donations, fish fries, taxes, indirect taxes being handed down from the municipality, however you're getting your money, or grant dollars. AFG is open right now. Cooperative purchasing, anything on Sourcewell meets the procurement process requirements for AFG. So if you get an AFG grant to buy SCBA, any of the equipment manufacturers that have a Sourcewell contract, You can pick them, use it, spend it, and it's going to meet the requirement. So cooperatives, easy to use process. The good ones are going to have staff and contract assistants to work with you. There you go, usable, typically usable with grant funds, and cooperatives like Sourcewell don't cost you or me as a chief, don't cost the municipality any money to use. State and local laws must allow for it or not prohibit it. It's typically at the state level, though. For those that didn't know this was going to happen, here's your eye chart. Please read from the fourth row up. I'm not going to read this off to you, but there's the Montana code that says that you can do it. So some examples of cooperatives: Sourcewell we've talked about, HGAC or Houston Galveston Area Council. Certainly on the apparatus and some of the equipment fronts, you're probably familiar with HGAC. Omnia Partners, NASPO Value Point. These are all different cooperatives out there. Those high level cooperatives that are offering a larger catalog, if you will, of items for purchase. When you look at them, do you have to register? Is there a fee? Who's their lead agency? Like, how is it set up? Are they a government entity? Are they the lead agency? Is somebody else? Like, how does that fit into your requirements, into your authorization, typically at the state level? How long have they been along? Are they the Johnny come lately, or are they somebody that's established? What procurement policy do they follow, and how does that fit to what you need? And how responsible are they, and how accessible is their documentation? Because you're going to need the documentation. Like, let's take AFG grants. You're going to need to be able to have that on record in case you end up with a desk audit. There's an association for everything. Somebody that's been in the association world in one form or another for over 25 years in two different industries. I can tell you that there's an association for everything. My favorite was the Association of Hand Surgeons. Real thing. There is an association, and there's an association for associations too, which I used to be a member of. There's an association for procurement partners for these big procurement groups, and they've got a bunch of information. If you look at this and go, hey, this is, I'd like to know more, NCPP is a great place to get that kind of information. So obviously when evaluating a contract, what's the pricing, what are the terms and conditions, how long can you use the contract, how flexible is it? Those are all things to consider when you're looking at them. Obviously the flexibility, what's the pricing, what are, how easy is it to make adjustments? From the vendor perspective, one like Sourcewell is actually very flexible. Sourcewell looks at it as, hey, we want to be able to make this work. Obviously, in the last 4 years, they've had awardees that have come back and said, look, we've got to completely change the product because we can't get the parts anymore. Like, things have changed, and so we're going to have to re-engineer it. We have to get it recertified with UL or with the FCC or whomever. And so, Sourcewell makes it very easy for folks to be able to adjust that. Certainly as the prices have changed, that they've done that. They are one of the better ones to work with. And that's a two-way street in being transparent to the end user as to what's going on. So, using that cooperative contract, establish the legal authority. You've got it in Montana. It may be as simple for you in a small volunteer department for your board of directors to say, this is what we're going to do. Fire district, you may need to have a board resolution. City council may need to have a resolution. Here's the thing I'll say, and you'll be surprised on how many agencies and entities are using cooperative purchasing contracts in municipal government, especially Sourcewell, and you don't even realize it. So, what's your political landscape? Are you going to have any issues? Again, for the small rural departments, this is probably a very simple sitting on the tailboard in the truck room conversation. Obviously, with your cities and towns, it's probably a little more involved of a conversation. So you said, all right, we're going to do this. This is how we're doing it. You go work directly with the local supplier. You go deal with your local salesman. You're not having to go through any process. And like in the case of Sourcewell doesn't sell this stuff. They're not selling it. They've got the contracts. You're using their contract. Okay. You work with that local supplier. You finalize the contract terms. You tell them up front, I'm going to use Sourcewell. I'm working with these couple of different ambulance manufacturers, and the first thing I said was, this is going to be Sourcewell. The type 1 conversation, I had one of the dealers sit down with me, and we're sitting talking, and he was hedging on something. I couldn't figure out where he was going, and he's like, he was broaching Sourcewell. He was hoping that he wasn't going to have to do a RFP process, that we were going to buy off of the Sourcewell contract. I just slid my other business card across the table at him, and he quickly realized that he didn't have a problem. Do whatever member number reference on that, and then maintain the documents for any audit records. It's really that simple. It is really, really that simple. So who is Sourcewell, and what's the connection to it? The basis of the public safety program at Sourcewell came from the Western Fire Chiefs, of which Montana is part of. It is a partnership with the IFC divisions here in the United States and the state fire chiefs associations like Montana. It is a program that started about 20 or so years ago. And about 5 years ago or so, Western was looking to take it to a new level. They had a partner, and they wanted to change the direction they were going. Sourcewell was looking to get more into the public safety space. And again, it was kind of like those old ads, hey, your chocolate's in my peanut butter chocolate. Hey, this is pretty good. Currently, the Fire Rescue GPO, this is something you may know it as, Fire Rescue GPO is being sunsetted. The reason for that, in a nutshell, is procurement officials across the country, they know who Sourcewell is. They have no clue who Fire Rescue GPO is. It's easier for us to educate you as a chief or as an officer or somebody in a fire department to say Sourcewell than it is for you to spend the time explaining to your procurement official who Fire Rescue GPO is. So the Sourcewell brand is far more accepted and valued and known, I guess is probably the better way to put it. And so that's the sunset that's going on right now. But it is where it's where this kind of started in the fire service, coming out of Western, and now living at Sourcewell. So who is Sourcewell? Sourcewell is it's out of Minnesota. It's a 5-county municipal services district. So we think of a fire district. I know where I come from in Pennsylvania, like my county of 190,000 residents has 7 school districts in it, because we don't have county-wide school districts. And they're standalones under Commonwealth law. This is something very similar, but it's for their core business is, building maintenance, building construction, schools, roadways, that kind of stuff. That was their core business. We're out of Staples, Minnesota, so a couple hours out of Minneapolis, so you betcha. And they are one of, if not the largest co-ops in the United States. $8+ billion. We've got to be getting close to 100 public safety contracts, and somewhere over 600 overall contracts. And absolutely, I'm working for them, but truly the staff support is awesome on all sides. And they do also have connections in Canada, but they truly are this kind of, they've built this machine, and what's behind it, and everyone asks, well, what's in it for them? Like, why are they doing this? The real deal is that the vendors, the contract awardees, they negotiate some kind of a fee. Sometimes it's a percent or two. Things like apparatus and big trucks and land, excavation equipment. It's a preset amount, but there's an agreed upon amount, and that money comes back to Sourcewell. The awardees are not permitted to pass that through to us as the purchasers. It has to be transparent, but they do that, and so that covers the cost of Sourcewell to do this process, because it's very involved, as you can imagine. But it also allows them to be able to put what in a commercial entity would be the profit, of course, their government, but it puts it back into their community. So they're a relatively poor rural central Minnesota community. They have a funding stream that serves their residents, and that's really the driver. That's the business case behind why they've created this. It didn't used to be named Sourcewell. They changed their name to Sourcewell to reflect this side of their operation. It is a funny name for a government entity. So here on the fire service side are some recent solicitations. The initial move was into fire. We then moved, also picked up EMS or law enforcement, and have a couple of contract areas around EMS, including several ambulance manufacturers. We've got, and we'll just go to this. Here's a not all-inclusive list of contracts that are public safety centric. We have that is not shown here is like Zoll, Stryker, are now on contract with us, so that you can get your equipment, your supplies on the EMS side now. So how it works, very simple. We do a solicitation. Vendors respond to it. It's evaluated, and it's awarded. So whatever it may be, you join. Doesn't cost anything to join. First thing I would recommend is make sure that your agency doesn't already have an account, because you may. You sign up. You've got the legal authority to use the contracts, and you do. You go directly to the vendor. You tell the vendor, I'm buying off Sourcewell. They say, great. And you work with them. You agree on how you're going to do it within the confines of the contract. You sign off, you pay it, they deliver. All of the information, products and services, all of the contract documents, the competitive process, who responded, what their responses were, the pricing, all the content, it's all on their website, sourcewell-mn.gov. This all has to be out there, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because some of these companies, they're like, well, this is, we don't want everyone to know. Public procurement, this is the way it works. And so all this information is out there. It is transparent. You can see the rankings of how they ranked the respondents and who they pick, okay, they picked these 5. Well, there was 10 respondents. And I can tell you that when we say that on a typical solicitation, somewhere between 25 and 50% get selected, get awarded, and the rest do not. It is truly competitive, which means at any given time, there may not be the equipment manufacturer, the gear manufacturer, the apparatus manufacturer, they may not be there. We hope they are, but it is competitive, and sometimes things don't work out. Again, work directly, finalize terms, everything we just talked about. The value here is that you have no obligation when you reach out to somebody to use it. It gives you a lot of choice. It saves time, and all the legwork is done. And that all comes from having that Sourcewell account. It opens the door for you. So why do you care here in Montana? Well, it's ease of use. It meets your procurement requirements. There is a lot of full catalogs on contract, and its purchases small and large. Okay. I made the joke, or I did not joke, but made the comment about toilet paper. Who's buying from Grainger? Grainger's got a contract. The entire Grainger catalog is on a Sourcewell contract. So I wasn't joking about toilet paper. Office supply companies, Sourcewell contract. Galls, who's buying stuff from Galls, Sourcewell contract. And you don't have to buy, you're not just limited to the public safety space. Okay. If something ridiculous, you're probably not going to buy it. Bulldozer, new. Okay. But say you want to go buy a bulldozer, you can buy that off Sourcewell contract. Need to buy a computer, you can buy it off Sourcewell contract. They do buildings, Sourcewell contract. You're looking, but and back to the specifics. Training props, Sourcewell contract. IT solutions, phones, Sourcewell contract. So it's not just fire apparatus and fire equipment, it's everything you need to run your business. And whether that is a 2-rig, 2-bay station in a very, very small community, or the city of Bozeman, it's everything you need to be able to run your business. Michael, I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you tonight. As I said, I have a real affinity for Montana, and am more than happy to spend the time helping you folks learn a little bit.
Thank you so much, Shawn. That was really, really fantastic. So who has questions for Chief Stokes? I think I'd love to hear if people are using Sourcewell or other cooperative purchasing services. Maybe you have a success story, or you want to share something about it, or have a question. Well, Chief, I'll just ask, I'm just curious, like, what do you see as the barriers? Like, do you think people just don't know about this? I mean, we've done a pretty good job about educating about it, but I can't imagine why you wouldn't do it. And is it just because people don't know about it? I don't know.
I think that part of it is that people don't know about it. I think that certainly in talking to Chief Cowger, and I fully understand this, that I think that a lot of smaller departments don't think that it applies to them, or that it's worthwhile to them. And so I think that in a lot of ways, that's where it gets hung up. And it's why I kind of try to stress, look, this is small departments, big departments. You can be a nonprofit. You don't have to, I can say we're a nonprofit. We're tied to government, but we're not government per se, but we're still eligible to use it. And I think that it's, I think people, somebody's going to charge me. Somebody's, what's it, how's it going to do this? Or I don't have a procurement requirement. I think that
Right.
from the volunteer fire service, a lot of what I hear is that, well, I don't have a procurement policy. No, you may not. Right, wrong, indifferent, you may not. But do you get public money? Well, I don't get tax money. I mean, well, you may have heard, I know some of the folks are talking about bingo. Well, you heard about bingo. You heard about bingo last
Yeah.
week. Okay. I run a bingo parlor. Okay. And that's how I fund 3/4 of my department's expenses every year. Okay. That's what we do in the East. That's still public money. Those people are coming to our hall to gamble, knowing that we're going to take the revenue side of that, the winning side that the house keeps, and we're going to use it to buy fire and rescue equipment to serve the community. And they expect that we're going to use it properly. And the nice thing is, a program like Sourcewell and using cooperative purchasing does all the legwork for you to be able to do that. Like if somebody walks in, if one of my bingo players, like, well, every time we get a new piece of apparatus, we take it out back, we show them, and they go, ooh, no, we turn the lights on, they get excited. But they, if somebody walked up to me and said, well, this thing looks gold plated, how did you use it? I can go, nope, here it is. This is what we used. This is where it came from.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I think we just need to get the word out there and make sure people know about it, because I think it's and maybe if people just try it one time and see, the savings, and see that it's not hard. So anyway, does anyone have any questions for Chief? Are all of you using Sourcewell or some other cooperative procurement right now? Everyone's being shy tonight.
Hey, Michael, this is Mike Chambers and Helena.
Hi.
Hey, this has been pretty interesting because I've been having some issues with my finance office and they're working on a procurement policy, but I did just go through HGAC and purchased a Type 3, and I've used NASPO to purchase Motorola's in the past. So this is new ground, but what I want to ask Shawn is, typically I utilize cooperative purchasing to kind of get past the process, so to speak. And Helena, our situation is we got to use, it's $80,000 limit. So if it's over 80 grand or potentially, we have to use a bid process. But it sounds like he utilizes, or Sourcewell is able to be utilized for purchases less than that, so to speak. So there's a lot of opportunity outside of bidding on larger purchases to utilize Sourcewell. Does that sound correct, Shawn?
It absolutely is, and we had the $80,000 question, if you will, when I was in Anaconda back in September, and yes, understanding that you have that threshold, it absolutely meets the requirements above, but there's nothing saying that you can't use it for anything below.
Right.
So it not only meets it, but you know that you're going to get a ceiling price and you're going to get a best value price for any item below.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just hadn't thought about using it that proactively for, smaller capital purchases that are less than 80 grand for certain things. Is there a significant percentage? I mean, do we get a better deal, consistently through just piggybacking on these contracts?
The short answer is yes. The thing is, it's different from contract to contract.
Sure.
Okay. I use Granger because it's something everyone kind of uses or understands, and what the value is there, and we've seen it's whatever the percentage off is. it's set up that you go through Sourcewell and you sign up with a portal with Grainger, and you order everything off of it through there, and you're getting the Sourcewell price. If you go to the Sourcewell website and look up whatever it is that you're looking for, it will have the pricing documents there, and you will see what the advantage is. And typically it's so much % off of list price. And in a lot of things, it can be very specific to items. It can be the catalog.
Gotcha. So with your experience, is there a lot of folks that use it for say large capital purchases that have monthly purchases that are, say, you know, tens and twenties of thousands or whatever, you know, 5 to 10s, that utilize it in that smaller kind of arena?
They do. I will tell you, as an East Coaster, your $80,000 marker line is really high to us. So it's a it took a couple of folks. It took a little bit of back and forth for me to grasp that day in Anaconda that that was there, because I'm like, 80 grand, boy, that's a lot of money. Like, to us, that's a lot of money. So, but as I noted, I have $1,000, which I need to go back to my board and be like, okay, New World Order, we need to up this a little bit just for petty cash. But no, people are having to buy stuff in at much their break line is much lower in a lot of communities, and so it just becomes a no-brainer because they're doing even more stuff.
Cool. That makes sense. No, sounds good. That's all I had. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
And I will say, Chief Stokes kind of alluded to it, but he didn't come right out and say that the Montana State Fire Chiefs benefits from this partnership with Sourcewell. So we actually do get a bit of a royalty off of this partnership with Western Fire Chiefs and Sourcewell. So it's just incentive for people to use Sourcewell, here in Montana to help out the Chiefs. So
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chief Stokes. We really appreciate your time tonight. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We had a few people leave already, but we'll send out a follow-up email with the recording and an evaluation. And we are just so grateful to you for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We're very happy to be here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Take good care. We'll be in touch.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief.